Figure that one out. Now, I made a way of saying how A was pronounced, but I had to use A to show how A was pronounced. And that is that is an epitome of the problem that we have. You can't say in words how words are used. And so, do you know a game called Vish? What you do is everybody has a standard college dictionary, Webster's College Dictionary. You sit round a table, and then there's a hat, and you pull out, somebody pulls out a word, and everybody looks the word up. Then they write down on a pad the key words and the definition of that word, and then they start looking them up. And the first person who gets back to the original word calls out Vish, short for vicious circle, and he wins the round. And the referee, there's always a referee, he decides whether you worked fairly, whether you didn't take an illegitimate shortcut, you know, like looking up and or something like that in the definition. You had to look up a key word, because so long as a dictionary doesn't include pictures, all it does is define words in terms of words. It never makes the bridge between words and the physical universe, which Korzybski so delightfully called the unspeakable world. So fascinating. Unspeakable also means disreputable. The world that is not academically respectable. Do you know that in recent controversy at Harvard about the experiments with psychedelic drugs, some member of the Department of Social Relations actually said, no knowledge is academically respectable knowledge unless it can be expressed in words. Completely throws out the football team. You know, did you ever hear of the football team doing a thesis on how to play football? Obviously not. Because that's something that has to work. Notice, too, in the academic world that all subjects which are effete are studied in terms of their history. When you start studying mathematics, you do not study the history of mathematics as the initial course, but history of philosophy, history of religions is the start-out course in these topics. Medicine, you don't start studying the history of medicine until you're in graduate school. History of science is a graduate school subject. History of psychology. Whenever you think a subject is practical, you go right into doing it, rather than being historical about it. But the point simply is that you cannot pretend to be scientific and to adopt the gestures and attitudes and postures of scientists about things that are arts and that require a certain kind of personal magic, profundity, or whatever to carry them off. And so I would say that the thing that affects me and depresses me about the whole world of psychiatry, psychology, and psychotherapy is a certain extraordinary lack of depth, and almost bending over backwards not to encounter anything profound, because that would expose us to the charge of mysticism or some other bugbear. But this is quite fatal, because what your patients are concerned with is profound things. Have you ever looked into the literature on the relation between psychotherapy and death? You will find a lot of blank pages. There's hardly anything about it. I know of 2 books and I don't know how many articles. I'm not in the habit of reading articles very much, but so far as books are concerned, I know about 2 books outside of the work of Freud, where he discusses death wishes and so on, and outside the work of Jung, who has said that he regards his kind of psychotherapy in particular as a task for the second half of life in which a person prepares for death. But by and large, ordinary psychotherapeutic work ignores the subject. Likewise, the whole orientation of medicine to death is one where death is a misfortune. It's not allowed to happen. Doctors don't prepare people to die. When somebody is in a state of terminal cancer, all their friends come around and say, cheer up, old boy, you'll be all right in another 2 weeks, and we'll be back and having a beer again, or we'll go out to the country and you'll be back at work. Love to see you in the office once again. This person knows jolly well you're going to disappear within a couple of days. And knows this and feels the strange mockery of his friends' unwillingness to accept this, and therefore a lack of genuine human relationship. And so the physician is embarrassed in a way that maybe a priest is not embarrassed. When somebody says to him, listen, I am sick of being ill, I want to die. I want to stop all this stuff being fed into my veins, and I want to be through. And the doctor in his role can't say, of course, that's perfectly understandable. And insofar as the psychotherapist takes his cue from medical role-playing, he can't say to a person, all right, you should die. I think it's a good thing. A very wise man once said, this was Ananda Kumaraswamy, I would rather die 10 years too early than 10 minutes too late. There's a time to die. And dying should be one of the great events of life, like birth and marriage, graduation, anything like that. No, all cultures have had the rites of passage. But in our culture, death is a very strongly repressed event. We call it passing away. And our morticians, who call themselves that instead of undertakers, make up bodies in the mockery of a beauty sleep. And they have a kind of oily, unctuous, avuncular approach, which is extremely beastly. And they make a huge racket out of the whole thing. You know, the fantasies about Forest Lawn, which is the epitome of all this kind of thing. Henry Miller's one, I was quoting to someone at dinner, where he says, swallow a dozen vitamins and throw anything down the hatch. If that doesn't work, see a surgeon. If that doesn't work, get a Hollywood funeral. They're the duckiest, cutest, craziest funerals in the world. You could have your beloved embalmed and sitting on a couch reading something edifying like the Bhagavad Gita and smoking a cigarette. Cigarette guaranteed not to rot away before the lips and the buttocks. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? And this, you see, because the healing professions today are working on the basis, the metaphysical basis, of that 19th century scientific mythology, that this world is nothing but a mechanism. And that when you're dead, as people love to say and lick their tongues around it, as if that really said anything at all. And so what we are reduced to is On the matters on which we are fundamentally embarrassed, we carefully keep silence. We have no answers about that. We'd rather not talk about it, but it's a thing people are fundamentally fascinated with. Now, you can rationalize all you want and say that questions about the ultimate meaning of the universe have no meaning. You can be as logical positivist as you please, but that will never quash the questions. And a person who doesn't somehow have a sense of relationship with whatever it is that's eternal will rattle rather than speak. And so I would say to you, talking frankly here tonight, that the most important thing for any kind of psychologist or therapist is not religion in the old sense of this word, because religion is something in our world partisan. Are you a Catholic or a Baptist, a Methodist or an Episcopalian? You deal there, you see, in those, in our sectarian religion, with things that are beliefs, and therefore not knowledge. These are expressions of opinions and hopes, but they're not. These religions have no power because they have no knowledge, they have no experience. In fact, they hate experience. If you try and discuss, as I did when I was a minister in the Anglican Church, problems of mystical experience,